One evening, Daniel invited her to a quiet dinner at a small local restaurant. It wasn't fancy, but it was intimate, with soft music and warm lighting. As they shared stories and laughter over the meal, Emma noticed how easy it felt to be herself around him. She didn't have to pretend to be strong, or cheerful, or okay, she could just exist. And he accepted her entirely after dinner. They walked along a quiet street, their hands brushing occasionally, until they finally held hands fully. The touch was electric yet comforting. Emma realized that this wasn't just attraction, it was connection, understanding, and the slow bloom of something deeper. When they reached her doorstep, Daniel hesitated. He looked into her eyes as if searching for permission, reassurance, or perhaps something he didn't know how to name. "Emma," he said softly, I don't want this to end. Whatever this is, I want it to continue." Her breath caught. Her heart was full, her mind racing, yet she knew the answer. "It doesn't have to end," she whispered. "We'll take it slowly. But yes, I want this too." That night, as she lay in bed, Emma reflected on the weeks that had passed. For the first time in years, she felt alive. She felt hope, connection, and the possibility of love again. It wasn't a fairy tale, and it wasn't perfect. But it was real, and that reality mattered more than anything. She closed her eyes, smiling to herself, feeling the warmth of Daniel's hand in her memory. "Please don't stop," she whispered silently, not to him. Not to the world, but to this feeling, fragile and beautiful, that had begun to take root in her heart, for the first time in a long time. Emma was ready to believe that happiness and, maybe, even love was possible again. The days that followed felt like a gentle awakening for Emma. Each morning, she woke with a sense of anticipation she hadn't known in years. The small apartment seemed brighter, the air warmer, and even the ordinary tasks felt meaningful. Daniel had become a part of her daily life, visiting often, leaving notes, sharing meals, and offering that quiet support she had craved. Every interaction carried a tenderness that left her heart fluttering and her mind replaying every glance, every word. One rainy evening, not unlike the one when he had first returned to her doorstep, Daniel came over again. He brought her favorite tea, and they settled on the couch, their shoulders almost touching. Outside, the rain drummed softly against the window, a soothing rhythm that matched the quiet thrum of Emma's heart. "You've changed," he said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. Emma smiled faintly, unsure if it was a compliment or an observation of the truth she had been trying to hide. "I guess I am learning." Slowly, she admitted. "Learning to live again, to trust again." Daniel's eyes softened. "You've done more than that. You've reminded me how beautiful life can be, even after loss. You've reminded me to care, to feel." Her chest tightened at the sincerity in his voice. They had both carried the weight of grief for years, yet somehow, together, it felt lighter. The silence that followed wasn't awkward dead, was full of understanding. A shared knowledge that they had each been broken but were slowly finding repair in each other's company. Emma turned to him, her heart pounding. "Daniel, I don't know what this is yet. I don't even know if I can define it, but I want it to continue." He smiled, that gentle, unwavering smile that had become her anchor. "It doesn't have to be defined," he said. "It just has to be real." And it is. For a moment, they sat there, breathing in the quiet, feeling the connection that had grown steadily over weeks of small gestures, long conversations, and shared memories. Each moment felt precious, each glance weighted with emotion. Emma's hand brushed his, and he took it, their fingers entwining naturally. The touch was electric but tender, a confirmation of feelings that neither needed to name out loud yet. Days turned into weeks, and Emma began to notice more subtle changes. Her laughter was easier, her smiles more frequent. She started leaving her blinds open to let the sunlight in. And she found herself humming while cooking dinner, small signs that life was beginning to seep back in. Daniel noticed too, and he would often pause mid-conversation, his gaze lingering on her with something she hadn't seen before. A mix of admiration, affection, and longing. One evening, Daniel suggested they take a drive out to the countryside. Emma agreed, eager for a change of scenery and the comfort of his company. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink as the sun began to set, and the air smelled faintly of pine and earth. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the music low, the windows slightly cracked. Finally, they stopped at a small overlook. The view stretched for miles, rolling hills, distant rivers, and the sky fading into twilight. Emma felt her chest swell with an emotion she could barely name. Awe, peace, and something deeper that tugged at her heart. Beautiful, she whispered. Daniel looked at her, his expression soft. Not as beautiful as you, he said quietly. Her heart skipped. She glanced away, cheeks flushing, unsure of how to respond. She wanted to retreat, to hide behind caution, but the pull between them was too strong. Slowly, she turned to him, meeting his gaze. In his eyes, she saw patience, respect, and a depth of feeling that made her want to lean closer. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted, voice trembling slightly. I'm scared. I've been hurt before. I don't want to ruin what we have. Daniel reached out, gently placing his hand over hers. Emma, he said softly, what we have isn't fragile because we're scared. It's real because we care. We don't have to know everything about the future. We just have to be present now, together. Her breath caught at his words. She realized that the fear she carried was not a wall to keep him out, it was a barrier to her own heart. And with Daniel's steady presence, she felt safe enough to lower it. They walked back to the car slowly. Hand in hand, the silence between them comfortable and warm. Every brush of their fingers sent small sparks through her chest, subtle reminders of the connection growing between them. The drive home was quiet, city lights reflecting in the windshield like scattered stars. When they reached her apartment, Daniel lingered at the door, his hand hovering near hers. Emma, he said softly, I need to know something. I need to know if I should keep coming back. If I'm welcome here, fully. Her heart raced. This was the moment she had been waiting for without realizing it. She wanted to tell him everything, to lay her heart bare, but words felt too small. Instead, she reached out and took his hand, holding it firmly. Please don't stop, she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Don't stop being here. Don't stop caring. I don't want this to end. Daniel's eyes lit up with a mixture of relief and joy. He leaned closer, resting his forehead gently against hers. I won't, he said. I promise. I'm not going anywhere. In that quiet embrace, Emma felt a weight lift from her chest. It wasn't about passion or desire, it was about love that had grown slowly, carefully, from shared grief, understanding, and trust. It was a love that honored the past while opening the door to a new future. The rain began again outside, soft and steady, tapping against the windows. Inside, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Hope that life could be beautiful again, that laughter could return, that love could bloom even after heartbreak. They stayed there for a long while, hands intertwined, sharing quiet words and comfortable silences. The world outside was dark and rainy, but inside, warmth and light filled the room. Emma realized that she had found something precious, someone who saw her fully, who accepted her past, and who offered a chance at happiness without judgment. Weeks passed and their bond deepened. Small gestures, a cup of tea left on the counter, a note on the fridge. A quiet smile across the room became anchors in their daily lives. Emma found herself laughing freely, dreaming again, and looking forward to each new day. One evening, as they watched the sun set from her balcony, Daniel took her hand. Emma, he said, I know this hasn't been easy. I know the past still matters. But I want you to know something. Being with you, seeing you smile, hearing you laugh, it's changed me. You've changed me, and I want this us. Whatever that becomes. Tears welled in Emma's eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense of being understood and loved. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. I feel the same way, she whispered. And I want this too. In that moment, Emma realized that she hadn't found a replacement for what she had lost. She had found a bridging path from grief to hope, from loneliness to connection, from sorrow to love. And she knew, without a doubt, that she never wanted to let go outside. The rain fell harder, but inside, Emma and Daniel were wrapped in warmth, trust, and the quiet promise of a new beginning. She whispered again, softly, almost to herself, "Please don't stop." It wasn't just a plea for his presence. It was a plea for life, for love, for the courage to move forward, and for the strength to embrace happiness again. And in that quiet, rainy night, Emma realized something profound. She had survived loss. She had healed, and she had discovered that even after heartbreak, the heart could bloom again. With Daniel by her side, she felt ready to face the future, whatever it held, knowing that this gentle, real, and enduring love was worth every risk, every fear, and every step forward. She closed her eyes at his touch. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was human, real, the kind of comfort she hadn't let herself feel in years. "Please don't stop." She whispered again, her voice trembling. He froze, unsure, his hand still resting against her cheek. But then she opened her eyes, and in them he saw everything: grief, loneliness, gratitude, and the smallest spark of something new. He didn't move closer. He didn't say a word. He simply stayed, his presence enough to quiet the storm in her chest. They sat in silence, broken only by the ticking of the clock and the hum of the city beyond the window. After a while, she spoke again. "Do you ever think about him?" "All the time," Daniel said quietly. "He was my brother in every way that mattered. Losing him, it changed me too." Their eyes met again, and this time there was no hiding from it, the shared loss that connected them. The pain that had slowly turned into understanding. Emma leaned back, taking a deep breath. "I don't know what this is, Daniel," she admitted. "I just know I don't want to feel alone anymore." He gave a small nod. "Then don't be." It was the simplest answer in the world, yet it hit her harder than any promise could. The evening stretched quietly between them. Daniel helped her clean the kitchen, their hands brushing once, twice. Each accidental touch sent a rush through her chest, followed by guilt she didn't know how to fight. When he left, she walked him to the door. He paused there, looking at her like he wanted to say something important but couldn't find the words. "If you ever need anything, even just company," he said softly, "you know where to find me." "I know," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. When the door closed, Emma leaned her back against it, her heart beating faster than it had in years. She felt alive, confused, scared all at once. She knew what people would say if they saw her with Daniel. They'd call it too soon, too complicated, too wrong. But none of those words matched what she felt. It wasn't wrong. It was human. The next few days blurred by. Daniel texted her every morning, sometimes just to say good luck at work or don't skip breakfast again. His messages made her smile in a way she hadn't in a long time. She started sleeping better. She even caught herself humming while cooking dinner one night, a sound that surprised her as much as it comforted her. One Friday evening, Daniel invited her to a small art show downtown. "It's nothing fancy," he said, "but I think you'll like it." She almost said no, afraid of what people might think. But then she realized she didn't want to hide anymore. She wanted to feel normal again. She said yes. The gallery was small, filled with soft light and the scent of fresh paint. Daniel introduced her to a few friends, and for the first time in years, Emma didn't feel like a shadow of her past. She laughed, she smiled, and when Daniel looked at her, she saw pride in his eyes. Later, as they walked back to her car, the city lights reflecting in puddles, she felt the quiet between them again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was warm, charged with something unspoken but undeniable. At her doorstep, Daniel hesitated. "Emma," he began, but she stopped him with a soft smile. "Thank you," she said, "for reminding me what it feels like to live again." He didn't reply, just smiled back. That gentle smile she'd come to depend on. When she closed the door behind him, she pressed her hand to her chest and realized her heart was beating differently now. Faster, fuller. She wasn't ready to call it love, but something inside her whispered the same words that had become her quiet truth. Please don't stop. Not the friendship, not the laughter. Not this fragile, beautiful beginning that made her feel human again. And as the night settled over Seattle, Emma knew this was the start of something she hadn't believed in for a long time. A second chance at feeling alive. The weeks that followed felt different for Emma. The early mornings that had once been quiet and hollow were now filled with small moments of anticipation. She found herself checking her phone with a smile, waiting for Daniel's messages. Sometimes they were short a good morning, a joke, a reminder to eat, but they made her heart race in ways she hadn't expected. She knew she was falling into something she couldn't yet name, but for the first time in years, she didn't want to stop it. Daniel became a constant presence, though always careful. He never rushed her, never pressured her, but his visits were frequent enough that her apartment felt warmer, fuller. They cooked together on lazy Sunday mornings, laughter echoing through the small kitchen. Emma had always loved cooking, but it felt different now. Fun, comforting, shared. The way Daniel teased her about burning toast or forgetting ingredients made her laugh freely, something she hadn't done in years. It was a sound that reminded him why he had cared so deeply for her all this time. One evening, they decided to take a walk along the waterfront. The city was quiet, the streetlights reflecting in puddles from an earlier rain. The air smelled of salt and wet pavement, and Emma felt alive in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Daniel walked beside her, close, but giving her enough space, as if he could sense her delicate emotions. They talked about trivial things, books, the new art exhibit downtown, old memories of Michael, but there was a weight in the conversation that neither could ignore. At one point, Emma stopped to watch a small boat rocking gently in the harbor. "It's strange," she said softly, "how something so small can feel so peaceful." Daniel looked at her, understanding in his eyes. "Sometimes it's the little things that remind us life is worth noticing," he said. She turned to him, feeling a rush she could no longer hide. His face, framed by the soft glow of streetlights, seemed impossibly close. For a moment, she thought about how easy it would be to reach out, to let her hand brush his. But she stopped herself. She wasn't ready. "I feel guilty," she admitted after a pause. "I know I shouldn't, but I feel like I'm moving on too fast." Daniel stopped walking and faced her. His eyes softened. "Emma, moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means you're learning to live again. Michael would want that for you. I want that for you too." Her heart caught at the words. They weren't just comforting, they were permission. Permission to feel again, to hope, to allow herself something she had thought impossible. The walk continued in silence, but the quiet was no longer heavy. It was full of unspoken understanding, shared grief, and tentative hope. They passed a small park, empty except for the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Daniel gestured to a bench. "Sit with me," he said. They sat side by side, shoulders almost touching but still respecting the space between them. Emma found herself staring at him, noticing the small details she had always admired: the curve of his smile, the kindness in his eyes, the way he seemed to listen so completely. She realized she had never noticed him like this before. He was always Michael's friend, always someone to rely on in hard times. But now, it was someone she wanted to know for herself. "Do you think," she began hesitantly, "that we can really find happiness again after something like this?" She gestured vaguely to the city, the world, the past that had left her so empty. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached over and took her hand gently. The touch was warm, grounding, and it sent a shiver through her. "I think happiness isn't about forgetting what's behind us," he said. "It's about finding moments that make life worth living again. And sometimes, those moments are with the people we least expect." Emma's chest tightened. His words were gentle, but they carried weight. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't just filled with grief. She imagined laughter, shared meals, quiet evenings like this one. She imagined Daniel by her side not as a reminder of the past, but as someone who could be part of her tomorrow. They walked back slowly, hand in hand now, the city lights reflecting in their eyes. Every step felt deliberate, every glance intentional. It was a delicate dance, this mix of grief, hope, and attraction that neither fully understood. That night, when they reached her doorstep, neither wanted the moment to end. Daniel lingered, just close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from him. "Emma," he said softly, "I don't want to rush you. I just want you to know I'm here, for whatever you need." She smiled, a soft, hesitant smile. "I know, and I'm grateful." The truth was, she wanted more than gratitude. She wanted connection, understanding, and perhaps even love, but she didn't know if she was ready to admit it. She didn't want to hurt him or herself or betray the memory of Michael. Yet something in her chest told her that the risk was worth it. Daniel finally stepped back, giving her space, but his hand brushed hers briefly as he left. That small contact lingered, a spark in the quiet night. Emma leaned against the door after it closed, breathing deeply, feeling her heart race in a way it hadn't in years. The longing, the fear, the hope pit all mixed into a heady emotion she couldn't name but didn't want to resist. The days that followed were filled with subtle changes. Daniel began leaving small notes for her, sometimes a quote from a book, sometimes a simple thinking of you. Emma found herself smiling at them in the quiet mornings before work, her heart swelling with something fragile and new. She realized she was beginning to trust again, to lean on someone, to feel safe with someone who had always cared. Rain slid down the glass like silver threads as Emma stood by the window, staring at the blurred city lights of Seattle. The air was cool and heavy with the scent of wet pavement. And for some reason, it made her chest ache in a way she couldn't quite explain. She had always loved the rain. It felt honest, gentle, and lonely, just like her heart had felt for the past 3 years. Ever since her husband, Michael, passed away in a car accident, the world had lost its color. People said time healed everything. But time had only made her quieter. Her apartment was small, but tidy plants by the window, a shelf full of books, and a single photograph of Michael on the nightstand. She talked to that photo sometimes, whispering things she couldn't tell anyone else. But lately, the silence after those whispers felt heavier. She had friends who tried to help, but none of them truly understood what it meant to lose the person you thought you'd grow old with. That night, she tried to distract herself with a movie. The laughter on the screen felt too loud, too far from her world. She sighed and turned it off, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Outside, the rain picked up, tapping softly against the window like a heartbeat. That's when her phone buzzed. "Daniel, hey, are you awake?" Her stomach fluttered at the name. Daniel. He was Michael's closest friend, had been since college. After the funeral, Daniel had been there for everything, fixing the broken water heater, handling paperwork, checking in when she refused to eat. But over time, he had drifted away. Maybe he thought it would be easier for both of them. Maybe it was. Still, every now and then, his name appeared on her phone, and her heart reacted before her mind did. She typed back a simple, "Yes. Everything okay?" A minute later, there was a knock at the door. Emma hesitated. She hadn't expected anyone. But when she opened it, there he was, Daniel, standing in the rain, hair damp, jacket soaked through, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "I was in the neighborhood," he said with a sheepish smile. "Thought you could use some company? You don't mind, do you?" She should have said no. It was late. She was tired, and she didn't want to feel things she couldn't name. But her heart whispered yes. "Of course," she said softly, stepping aside. "Come in." The warmth of the apartment wrapped around them as he set the coffees on the counter. He looked around and smiled faintly. "You finally put up those curtains I told you about." She laughed lightly. "Took me 3 years, but yes." For a moment, it felt like old times, like the nights after Michael's death when they would sit together. quiet but not alone. Daniel's presence had always been steady, like a calm sea after a storm. Tonight, that calm felt like something she desperately needed. They sat on the couch, the sound of rain filling the spaces between their words. He told her about his new job at a design firm, the endless meetings, the dull office coffee. She listened, smiling for the first time that day. Then he looked at her and said gently, "You seem different lately." "Different how?" she asked, more distant. "Like you're here, but part of you isn't." She took a breath. "I guess I'm tired of pretending I'm okay. Everyone thinks grief just fades, but it doesn't. It just changes shape." Daniel's eyes softened. "You've carried this alone for too long." The room felt smaller then, the air heavier. His words touched something deep inside her, something she had buried. For years she had told herself she was strong, that she didn't need anyone. But sitting there, with Daniel's quiet concern washing over her, she realized how much she missed being seen. He leaned forward slightly. "You don't have to be alone in this, Emma." The kindness in his voice almost broke her. A single tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. She turned away quickly, embarrassed. But Daniel reached out and brushed it away, his hand warm against her skin. The touch was gentle, careful, like he was afraid she might pull away. She didn't. For a heartbeat, time stood still. The world outside faded into the sound of rain and the soft thudding of her heart. She looked into his eyes and saw not pity, but understanding. The kind of understanding that came from someone who had loved and lost too. "Please don't stop," she whispered before she could think. Daniel froze, unsure what she meant. But the look in her eyes said everything. She didn't mean for him to stop touching her hand or to stop being there. She meant don't stop caring. Don't stop seeing me. Don't stop being the one person who makes me feel alive again. He nodded slightly, his hand still resting against her cheek. "I won't," he said quietly. The words settled deep in her heart. They stayed like that for a while, saying nothing. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Inside, the air was thick with something fragile and unspoken. Emma could feel the warmth of his hand fade as he finally drew back, respecting the space she needed. She was grateful for that, for his patience, for his restraint, for his understanding. "Thank you for being here," she said softly. He smiled, that same gentle smile that always reached his eyes. "You don't have to thank me. You've always been worth showing up for." Her breath caught, but she didn't reply. Words felt too small. When he left later that night, Emma stood by the door long after it closed, her heart racing. She watched the rain falling harder now, streaking down the glass. For the first time in years, her thoughts weren't filled with grief. They were filled with questions, with warmth, with a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to feel in so long. Hope. As she turned off the lights and went to bed, she couldn't stop hearing his voice. "You've always been worth showing up for." Maybe this was the moment her life began again, not in some dramatic way, but in a quiet, honest one. A simple evening, a cup of coffee. A friend who refused to let her fade away. And though she didn't fully understand what was changing inside her, she knew this much. Daniel's return had stirred something she thought was gone forever. Outside, rain kept falling, steady and soft. And in the darkness of her room, Emma whispered a silent truth to herself. "Please don't stop, not the rain. Not the healing. Not this strange, fragile thing that felt a lot like hope." The next morning, sunlight filtered through Emma's curtains, soft and golden. She woke up feeling different, lighter somehow, though she couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the rain washing the city clean, or maybe it was Daniel's quiet presence that had lingered even after he left. His words kept echoing in her mind. "You've always been worth showing up for." No one had said something like that to her in a long time. It both comforted and scared her. She made coffee, staring at the steam curling into the air, and realized her hands were trembling slightly. Daniel had been her late husband's best friend, the man who had helped carry Michael's coffin. What right did she have to feel this warmth toward him now? She told herself it was nothing, just gratitude, just human connection, but deep down she knew that wasn't the whole truth. That afternoon, As she sorted through bills and emails, her phone buzzed again. "Daniel, I left my umbrella at your place last night. Mind if I stop by?" She smiled at the message. She knew he didn't forget it. Daniel was too careful for that. Still, she replied, "Sure, I'll be home." When he arrived, the sky was clear, but the air still smelled of rain. He stood by the door holding a paper bag. "I brought lunch," he said. "Thought you might not have eaten yet? You always assume I forget to eat?" she teased. "Because you usually do," he said with a grin. They sat by the kitchen window, eating sandwiches and talking about small things, his work deadlines, her attempt at learning to bake again, a neighbor's cat that always sneaked into her garden. It felt natural, easy, like a forgotten rhythm finding its way back. But underneath the laughter, Emma felt something shifting. Every glance, every small smile carried a warmth that made her chest tighten. She wasn't sure if she wanted to stop it or let it grow. After lunch, they moved to the couch. The afternoon light painted soft shadows across the room. Daniel looked around and said quietly, "You've changed this place a lot. It feels more." "You," Emma smiled faintly. "I think I'm still figuring out what me looks like." He nodded, watching her carefully. "You're doing better than you think." His tone was calm, sincere, but his eyes held something deeper, something unspoken. She looked away, afraid of what she might see if she didn't. "Sometimes," she said, voice soft, "I feel guilty for moving forward. Like I'm betraying Michael by even trying to feel happy again." Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You're not betraying him, Emma. He'd want this for you. You loved him, and that love doesn't vanish just because you start living again." Her throat tightened. She had heard similar words from others, but when Daniel said them, they felt real. He wasn't trying to fix her. He just understood. "I just miss who I was," she whispered. "When he was here, I was someone else. I don't even recognize myself anymore." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "You're still her," he said softly. "Just stronger now. You've survived something most people can't imagine." Something inside her broke open. The tears came before she could stop them. Daniel didn't hesitate. He reached over, gently wiping one away with his thumb, just as he had done the night before. She closed her eyes at his touch. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was human, real, the kind of comfort she hadn't let herself feel in years. "Please don't stop," she whispered again, her voice trembling.